The purpose of this recording is to provide exemplification of the high end of CEFR Level B1 performance for speaking. We'll talk about indicators of performance that make this test taker typical of the top of the B1 band. This recording only provides test taker responses. If you would like further context for the questions in this recording, you can find the corresponding test item audio and transcripts in the video, Speaking Exemplification, Item Audio and Transcripts. These are genuine responses from test takers. The responses have not been manipulated in any way. Therefore, there may be responses shorter than the allotted time, or the test taker may run out of time when providing their response. Table 1 shows the alignment of PTE Academic scores to the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, or CEFR. The exemplification materials in this resource have been selected using this alignment. These exemplification materials show responses from test takers who have been classified at each CEFR band based on their PTE Academic speaking score. It should be noted that speaking scores come from the combination of many test items that measure different aspects of language proficiency. The purpose of these exemplars is to show the range of item responses produced by test takers in different CEFR bands and to provide indicative evidence of the key features of speaking performances across and within CEFR language proficiency bands. At the high B1 level, test takers can produce spoken language in a reasonably fluent manner about a wide range of familiar topics, such as their interests, personal experiences, and habits. They can clearly express opinions, comment on other people's ideas, and deliver straightforward narratives. They are likely to display some hesitancy and at times lack fluency, especially when needing time to formulate ideas, and their speech will include inaccuracies, though rarely of a kind that impede communication of their main points. For each test item, you will hear the test taker's response first, followed by the commentary on their response.
The following image gives us information about the population in South Africa from 1996 to 2016. From the picture, we can see the populations of females and males. In 2016, the population of female is the total population is about 50 million, and the ratio of female and males are about half-half. From the picture, we can see that in 1996, the total population is about 40 million. The ratio of female and males are about half-half, which means about 20 million female and 20 million males.
This test taker's performance is typical of high B1 level. She demonstrates a full understanding of the image's main elements and manages to convey its main points within the time limit, despite her description lacking in detail somewhat. In comparison to low or mid B1, the test taker's speech is more fluent, though she still hesitates at times when needing to search for words. She uses a more extensive range of sentence structures and vocabulary than low or mid B1 test takers. For example, when she says the ratio is, or which means. Despite this, her speech still contains some inaccuracies. For instance, when attempting to use more idiomatic language like half-half, she demonstrates the ability to self-correct and repair her own speech when describing the total population of 2016 in a way that is typical of test takers who are moving towards B2 level.
The lecture gives us information about Melbourne. The speaker tells us information about the Melbourne is a dispersed city. The speaker gives us information that in the old days, people prefer to walk, which is more convenient because Melbourne is a much smaller city. The speaker also mentions that Melbourne is a more modern kind of city because cities spread in greater area. People can no longer walk to most of the places. The speaker also gives us information about that Melbourne has been there for decades. Overall, the lecture is very informative.
Typical of the high B1 level, this test taker tries to structure her retelling of the lecture in a logical way, but she frequently pauses as she does so, probably indicating that she needs time to find the right words and grammatical structures to convey the information. She has clearly understood the main points of the lecture, and in contrast to low and mid B1 test takers, she has caught more of the supporting detail. She has managed to understand why the lecture describes Melbourne as a more modern city, and drawing from the lecture, she uses the word dispersed in her retelling, indicating high B1 level comprehension skills. Although some influence from other languages she speaks is apparent, the test taker delivers her summary of the lecture with a sufficient degree of phonological control for everything she says to be understood. Although she doesn't have as wide a range of linguistic resources as we would expect at the B2 level, she has a good level of control over elementary vocabulary and structures, and she does not make major errors.
There are three people having a discussion in this dialogue. From the dialogue, we can hear that the first man says that they are talking about the uni open day and the recruitment. One man says there is no need to attract more students because they already have a good reputations. All they're gonna do is to disappoint them more. He doesn't know what the point of doing the open day. The woman also agrees that she thinks that all they need to do is to manage expectations better. The other man says for state school students, they are less confident because there are also students from the private school. But what they need to do is to make all school can have the same opportunities. If they have like a very high performance, they are a good student. The other man says they'll agree with it and hope others school could agree with this as well. The woman says that they could be honest about what their state is.
As we would expect at high B1 level, the test taker demonstrates the ability to follow most of the discussion and convey its main ideas and details in her summary. She has managed to catch both the straightforward factual information, for example that the discussion is about a uni open day and recruitment, and some of the speaker's lines of argument. This indicates that her comprehension ability is nearing B2 level. However, she doesn't quite have the degree of control we would expect at B2 level, especially when dealing with idiomatic language. For example, she says, "He doesn't know what the point of the open day" without an is at the end. However, she does demonstrate the ability to express herself with relative ease, despite some pausing as she searches for the right word and as she tries to structure her answer logically. She has a sufficient range of language to explain the main points of the discussion with some precision. Her lexical limitations cause some repetition, but she manages to make herself clear throughout.
I would suggest to buy her a new bean bag because it's very soft and very comfortable and it's very visible and right in the living room, which reminds them of how we love her. It's very sad to say goodbye, but it's probably nicer to have a gift that is remindable and she also likes it.
This task assesses interaction skills in relation to goal-orientated cooperation, and the test taker demonstrates the ability to communicate her ideas with some confidence, giving brief reasons and explanations, as we would expect at high B1 level. Despite some problems with formulation, for example when she says, "which reminds them of how they love her," she can keep going fluently with relative ease. Typical of high B1 level, the test taker's accent is influenced by the other languages she speaks, for example beanbag instead of binbag. But this has little effect on overall intelligibility. At high B1 level, we still expect lexical and grammatical errors to occur, but it should be clear what test takers at this level are trying to express. She says, "I would suggest buy her a new beanbag because it's very soft." Her saying buy instead of to buy or buying does not impede communication. Her saying it's very soft instead of they are very soft is an example of singularization or overgeneralization of singular nouns. A kind of error that is very common among learners whose first language does not mark singular and plural nouns in the same way as English. Again, the error does not prevent the test taker from communicating her idea.
In this bar graph, the bar graph illustrates the population in South Africa from the 1996 to 2016. In general, we can see an increase in the population for both female and males. So in the graph, the female is showing us blue bars, and the males are showing us black bars. The total population size increased from 40 million to nearly 60 million from 1966 to 2016.
This test taker's performance is typical of high B1 level, with some features showing B2 level ability, such as her fluency and her vocabulary range. Other features, however, such as her use of stress and her grammatical accuracy, show limitations that prevent a B2 score overall. She manages to describe the main features of the image, as well as its key details, in a sufficiently fluent manner, providing a suitably structured description with appropriate introduction of the image's topic and a concluding summary of the overall trend shown. At times, due to inappropriate stress within a sentence, her speech puts some strain on the listener, but most consonant and vowel sounds are produced correctly, and most words are clear.
In the lecturer talk about some fact about Melbourne. So Melbourne is a good example of that first city, and there were limitations for a city to grow if everything is just within a distance that you can just walk to anywhere. But the fact that being able to access the vehicle actually allow the city to grow because there are so many places that you cannot walk there. So sometimes
As we would expect at high B1 level, this test taker demonstrates the ability to understand straightforward factual information, identifying both general messages and specific details. She is able to convey the lecture's content in a reasonably fluent way, but her description lacks the control and structure we would expect of a B2 test taker. Her pronunciation is generally intelligible, though some words such as some fact and dispersed are difficult to understand due to limitations in phonological control that are typical at B1 level. Throughout the response, we can hear the influence of the test taker's first language on her intonation, stress, and rhythm, but this rarely hinders overall communication.
in the conversation, the three people talked about and had a discussion around why the university is having an open day, and also expressed some of their expectations. So firstly, one boy stated that he does not really see the need to have another uni open day because as he believes that there is already a high amount of applications and having another open day probably is just gonna attract more students but also disappoint them. The girl agreed with his idea, but she also raised the possibilities that maybe the university is trying to show more students about what they can offer and to manage their expectations. The other boy also made another argument that probably the university is trying to show people that the university is welcoming people from all backgrounds and show them that there is an opportunities for people from all backgrounds to succeed here. And also, the first boy then Then agreed with the idea that having more people from different background will be really good. And then the girl in the one of the boy also talk about their expectations in terms of how the volunteer can reflect the university's um, aspect in terms of welcoming diversity, and they also hope that the volunteers can really do something instead of just chilling around. And all three of them are coming to the
This test taker's understanding of the group discussion approaches what we would expect at B2 level. However, limitations in grammatical accuracy, vocabulary range, and pronunciation make her summary more typical of high B1 level. She demonstrates an understanding of the main topics, as well as the perspectives of the discussion participants. Referring to the participants as girl and boy is an error in register that we would not expect at B2. She speaks at length with relative ease, but her intonation patterns, as well as the trouble she has pronouncing a number of vowel sounds, occasionally impact her intelligibility in a way typical of high B1 level.
And in my opinion, because she's moving to another apartment, so probably we should think about something that is easy to carry with her, but also is functionable. So probably we can think about something that is not too large, but she can also use in her new apartment.
The test taker's interactional skills are clear from her response, despite her not managing to actually recommend a particular present. She is able to communicate her idea with confidence and fluency, expressing explanations for the kind of present she thinks should be given. She has a sufficient range of vocabulary to provide a detailed response. When lexical errors occur, for example, functionable, they do not impede communication.